Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. So today, I was just thinking about the upcoming season for Rings of Power, as well as War of the Rohirrim, and just like I did for Season 1 of Rings of Power, I thought it would be kind of interesting to go through some of my hopes and fears for Season 2. Again, these are just some of the thoughts, honestly, that I had on the way back from the gym, so I jotted them down and just wanted to jump into them in more of a informal sort of format. We'll first do Rings of Power, and then I'll have a separate video for the War of the Rohirrim as well. So if you enjoyed this, please check that one out as well. So recently with Rings of Power, we've gotten new pictures, a bunch of articles, right? The media for Season 2, the promotion and the hype is starting to really kick off, because at this point we're about a month and a half out from episode 1. And with that said, right, we're getting all these pictures, all these new releases. Honestly, too much for me to break down. I don't even know necessarily what I would say in a breakdown video of some of these. I mean, a lot of pictures that we have here, which honestly you can find all over the internet. I'll leave a couple articles with them linked in the description, but we've got some focusing on Adar. We've got some with Círdan's going to be in the show. We've got some with Anatar and Celebrimbor in Eregion, all this good stuff. And to be honest, I mean, these pictures look pretty sweet. Again, we'll break down my hopes and fears, so let's start with the hopes. With these pictures, I mean, let's be honest, with Rings of Power, the main problem was never the visuals. I think, say what you will about Rings of Power Season 1, there were so many beautiful shots. Valinor and the Wars of Beleriand and the first stage that we got in Episode 1 there. The visuals were always fantastic, right? And so you could see where they spent a lot of their money. It was always the substance behind those visuals that more or less became problematic. But my hopes for Season 2. I really hope that they learn from the mistakes of Season 1. Namely, there's only so much non-canon you can do in a adaptation or inspired by sort of story. I mean, this reference is always brought up all the time, but it does hold true. The ship of Theseus from Philosophy. How many parts of the ship can you replace and still call it the ship in general? And this is kind of where we're at with it being called the Lord of the Rings of Power. I mean, how much of it can you change? How much of it can you adapt in some strange, absurd way and still call it Lord of the Rings? I really hope, at least more than anything, that Season 2 is more coherent, cohesive, makes more sense than Season 1 did, and that maybe it follows more in the canon in what Tolkien actually wrote, in the appendices, in the Silmarillion, in the unfinished tales of Numenor and Middle-earth, and so on and so forth. I really hope that they do learn from some of those mistakes from Season 1. We'll see. With that being said, I also kind of hope that Season 2 corrects some of the mistakes, or at least some of the things people are unhappy about. For instance, I mean, there are some things you can't correct but I'm just willing to kind of put behind us if this show goes in a better direction. Durin in Season 1 lying to Gil-galad about the table and stuff, and the ceremonial importance of that. It bothered me at the time, still does, but things like that, it was just a moment. We can move on from that. But like the mithril being needed for the elves to stay in Middle-earth, or for them to not diminish, so on and so forth. Things like that, I think they could really, hopefully, improve on. And with that being said, I just hope overall this season is more coherent, that it focuses more on a few places versus everywhere all the time. I hope it also focuses more or less on the middle second age. Something I noticed from Season 1 was that there were a lot of jumps in the timeline if you look at the canon, right? When Numenor is starting to descend, right? Ar-Pharazôn, he's around in the late years of the Second Age, right? Because Numenor fell in some of the late centuries of the Second Age. So for Ar-Pharazôn to be around, even though it was Season 1 of a Second Age show, was strange. Especially at the same time that Celebrimbor's around, which was early to middle Second Age when he was starting to forge the rings. So I hope we fix up and clean up some of this time compression. I don't know if they will. I don't know if they can fix that at this point. But if I'm being hopeful, if I'm being optimistic, that's where I do hope that they come in and fix some of those issues with Season 2. So let's transition to some of my fears. And to be honest, I think I have more fears about Season 2 than hopes. Bad foundations. right? There's something to be said. Most of the best work we can do in life, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, is in the foundational stuff, right? It's never that, I mean, yeah, the top 1% where we're performing at our best and we're having a great day and doing what we need to do, the presentation of it, that's always great, but it's always the work at the foundation of anything that counts for the most amount in the end. And as a teacher, I know this really with a person that makes videos, right? It's all the other stuff that people don't see that usually counts for the most. Season 1 was a pretty bad foundation with how they set up certain characters, many of their characters. Galadriel, Sauron. I mean, even the lack of setting up Celeborn, plot elements, and strange inconsistencies. There was a lot of weakness in the plot of Season 1. The lore breaking, honestly, physics or common sense breaking stuff. See Galadriel swimming across the ocean in episode 1 to 2, or 2 to 3, for instance. I think it was 1 to 2. Right, stuff like that. I don't know if we can fix that. I mean, Halbrand was wounded in Mordor, and he rode to Eregion, which, if you look at the lore, that would take months on horseback to do. But somehow he survived all that, right? Whatever. These are the things that do scare me, because unless Season 1 ends up being more or less the odd one out of the seasons that are Rings of Power, and they really leave a lot of that illogic behind, which is their best bet at this point, I don't really see how they can recover some of that. So, with that being said, I'm also afraid that I don't know how much they can revise or fix, how much they can undo from Season 1 in terms of lore, in terms of their own story. Because I think a lot of Season 2 was written and or filmed before Season 1 aired or was finished. At least before a lot of the criticisms for Season 1 came out. And so I don't know how much time they actually had at the end of by the end of Season 1 to where we're at now to fix Season 2. So I do wonder if a lot of Season 2 has been made under the presuppositions that they made Season 1 under. I don't know if there was time for feedback. And I mean, I've talked to Royan about this as well, my co-host on the podcast and on my reviews, but he always joked that it seemed like Season 1 was written by committee. And why would they change that now? I mean, the show did well enough. It's a product, right? It's making enough money. So that's a big fear of, would they even want to change some of the things that they were doing? I don't know. Again, I'm also not sure where the focus in Season 2 is going to be. Is it going to be on their canon stories or not canon stories, right? Again, you can only change so much of it, in my opinion, and before it stops being Lord of the Rings. And in Season 1, honestly, it stopped being Lord of the Rings for me. But can they get that back on track? I don't know. It seems like they're going to focus on their non-canonical characters like Adar a lot more. It's the Stranger, right? And trying to make him into Gandalf, but then bringing Tom Bombadil into the Far East. Just things that never happened. But they have this opportunity to actually focus on Eregion and Celebrimbor and the Rings of Power, right? The name of the show. They have this opportunity. We'll see if they even take that. I would kind of doubt it at this point, which is a bit worrying. I'm also hoping that the show doesn't just double down on the things that it did get backlash for in Season 1. Oh, people were upset that we changed the lore and the canon and so forth, like that we deviated so much. We're going to deviate more, right? Oh, people were upset that, certain things were happening that were illogical. Doesn't matter. Let's just keep doing it more and more. And really, my hope against that is just, I really don't want the toxicity around the show, in the community, the Tolkien community about the show. It's upsetting to me to see how much that has continued. And so just from all sides, from people that love the show and can't stand the people that don't, and from the people that absolutely hate the show and can't stand the people that love it, right? Like, I don't know. The show can only do so much about that from the inside looking out. But I really just hope that it doesn't continue to fester that toxicity. I don't know. And one of my biggest fears about Season 2 overall is that by the end of the season, it gets to a place that you just can't fix it, you can't salvage it, and that what was Season 1, and hopefully what won't be but could be Season 2, just this illogical, somewhat disrespectful to Tolkien sort of mess, becomes the norm for the show in its 5 or so seasons. It's possible, but I really, really hope that is not the case. That's really, those are my fears for the show, and honestly, there are a lot of them. So, I mean, we'll have to see where this goes. Again, I'll continue to give my thoughts as best as I can. I would love to see at some point in my life, an actually good Second Age, Rings of Power-esque show or movie or anime or something that really depicts what happens. Again, some of the best that we've gotten, in my opinion, has been the Lord of the Rings online sort of stuff. Whatever we've gotten from Peter Jackson's movies in reference to the Second Age, in terms of adaptation about the Second Age, I think that's been the best so far. But if Rings of Power can't be that, it can't be a good adaptation. If that's the case, I really hope that in some point in our lives, we do get a good adaptation of the Second Age that is actually faithful and does what Rings of Power so far has not been able to do. So, again, definitely a lot more fears, to be entirely honest, on my end about season 2 than hopes. But again, we'll have to see. We go into this hoping for the best, but we'll see what happens. These pictures do look great, but again, it was never the visuals that were the problem with the show. It was always the substance behind the visuals. So we'll see. I'll keep you guys up to date. We'll get another trailer, I'm sure, during Comic-Con or sometime in the next few weeks. So I'll come back with a trailer reaction, review, breakdown with all of that, and our lore videos until then. So, my friends, if you'd like to support the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon or our YouTube memberships. That support really helps a lot. It means a lot to me as well. So thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members, Peter Sheppard, John Hume, Rhys Jenkins, Arthur, Merlin, Theodore, Andrew, Carlisle, and Zoomi. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.